mid-20th century United States seemed like the pinnacle of success. Economic growth surged, families expanded in droves, and cultural optimism. From beach parties in California to space dreams at NASA, the 1950s were hailed as a golden age. But beneath this veneer of prosperity, a slow-burning cultural shift had already begun, one that would profoundly reshape the values of the Western world. A century earlier, European Marxists believed that industrial collapse and class revolution were inevitable. Yet when the First World War erupted, the working class didn't revolt, they enlisted. This contradiction puzzled theorists. Why hadn't workers risen up? The answer, they thought, lay not in economics, but in culture. Two thinkers, Antonio Gramsci and Georg Lukács, began to question whether Western values themselves were the real barrier to revolution. If people clung to religion, family, and tradition, then no matter how harsh economic conditions became, rebellion would never take root. To clear the path for ideological change, culture itself would have to be transformed. Gramsci's dissent earned him a prison sentence under Mussolini, where he wrote about how cultural institutions maintained power. Meanwhile, Lukács held a position of influence in Hungary's brief communist regime, where he launched controversial programs promoting secularism and sexual radicalism. He believed that destabilizing traditional values, especially among youth, was key to societal transformation. Lukács resurfaced in 1923 at a Marxist symposium in Frankfurt, where he met Felix Weil, a wealthy ideologue with a vision, to launch an institute that would explore Marxism beyond economics. With funding secured, the Institute for Social Research was born, what we now call the Frankfurt School. Under the leadership of Max Horkheimer, the institute took a radical new turn, combining Marx's class struggle with Freud's theories of the subconscious. The group proposed a fresh formula. Rather than exploit workers' suffering, focus on their psychological alienation, a revolution of the mind, not the factory floor. As Hitler's regime took control in 1933, the largely Jewish faculty of the Frankfurt School fled. Their destination? Columbia University in New York, a bastion of American intellectual life. Ironically, the very culture they sought to critique now offered them refuge and a new platform. At Columbia, the Frankfurt School crafted a tool as disruptive as any manifesto: critical theory. This wasn't just academic critique, it was a relentless attack on every foundation of Western civilization. Family, faith, law, tradition, all were cast as mechanisms of oppression. One of their landmark works, The Authoritarian Personality by Theodor Adorno, suggested that conventional family structures and traditional values were linked to authoritarianism and even fascism. It challenged the idea that morality and order were inherently good, presenting them instead as instruments of control. Central to their view was a new duality: the oppressors and the oppressed. Unlike Marx's classes, this wasn't about income. It was about social norms, power, and perception. If you upheld tradition, you were complicit. If you defied it, you were enlightened. And slowly, the language of identity politics began to form. When the social movements of the 1960s exploded across America, Frankfurt School thought found fertile ground. No one capitalized on this more than Herbert Marcuse, a philosopher who stayed in the US while others returned to post-war Europe. His writings shaped the decade's rebellion against authority and convention. Marcuse's Eros and Civilization argued that repression, sexual, social, cultural, was the enemy of human fulfillment. The book's call for a liberation of desires helped fuel the countercultural tide. Sexual freedom, gender fluidity, and rebellion against the nuclear family weren't accidental. They were ideological. Then came repressive tolerance, where Marcuse flipped the traditional idea of free speech. Tolerance, he argued, should only be extended to progressive voices. Opposing ideas were dangerous and should be silenced. This concept, termed liberating tolerance, laid the groundwork for today's cancel culture. Over decades, the Frankfurt School's ideas drifted from academia to media, from student protests to mainstream politics. The once fringe belief that truth is subjective and tradition is oppressive has become embedded in institutions, from education to entertainment. The shift has been seismic. Cultural Marxism no longer wears red banners or waves revolution fists. It speaks through hashtags and HR policies, through viral videos and corporate virtue signaling. Its language is inclusion, its aim is equity, but its roots trace back to a quiet intellectual rebellion a century ago. Critics argue that this movement has fractured the American spirit. Instead of a shared national identity, we now navigate a maze of grievances and victimhood. Traditional pillars like the family, objective truth, and civic duty have been rebranded as tools of oppression. So what world has been built in the wake of this revolution? Some see Orwell's nightmare, a society obsessed with controlling speech and thought. Others see Huxley's vision, a population numbed by pleasure, pacified by distraction. Perhaps it's a mix of both. The intellectual descendants of the Frankfurt School found willing allies in American politics. Figures like Saul Alinsky adapted their ideas into community organizing strategies. Later leaders from academia to the presidency carried that torch forward, often subtly, sometimes boldly. Today, the debates rage louder than ever. Are we living in an age of enlightenment or in the shadow of manipulation? Are our societal shifts organic or guided by old ideological blueprints? These aren't just philosophical questions. They shape policies, define norms, and touch every part of our daily lives. As we consider the cultural metamorphosis of the West, one truth becomes clear. Revolutions don't always roar. Some whisper through lecture halls, flow through printing presses, and echo through generations. And whether you see it as liberation or decline, the legacy of the Frankfurt School is woven deep into the fabric of the modern world. Thanks for watching Footprints of History. If you found this journey through ideas and influence insightful, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more thought-provoking stories from the past that still shape our future. Until next time, keep exploring because the past is never truly gone. It just leaves footprints.